And to get your camera started. We're going. We might have sound enough. You guys can go ahead and go ahead and start.
Hello, Scott. Just trying to get the system up and running here. Yeah. There you go. There we go. All right.
Now we'll switch back. Yeah, you guys can go ahead and start whenever.
I'm not good. I'm not on.
Yeah, you can start whenever. It's recording.
Okay, so we're ready to go?
Yep.
All right.
It's just not gonna film you guys, but it can still hear you.
That's okay. Okay, that's fine. Then Ms. Aruba, would you call the roll or we'll call the meeting of the special meeting of the Harlem Township Zoning Commission to order?
Yes, Mike Kavler,
Here.
Joni Manson. Here. Brittany Hopper, Tom Need,
Here.
Louis Greenwell is not here. And Alan Zako.
Here. All right, Alan, since Louis is not here this evening, you'll serve on the commission and have voting rights tonight if we take a vote on anything. All right, thank you. We don't have no members of the public present in the room. And we don't have any outside members who have joined us online at this point. If there are any, we will acknowledge them at that point in time. And I'll take a break at that point and explain basically procedures to be followed for anyone who wishes to participate at some point during the meeting. Okay, with that said, we'll get right to the agenda. The only officials here this evening are Mike Cannon, our Director of Zoning and Development, who's sitting in the back of the room, and Ashley Zaruba, who is our zoning assistant. Our guest tonight is Scott Sanders, Director of Delaware County Regional Planning Commission. And we will be getting into agenda items that Scott has prepared for us and going over some of the issues that we identified at our last meeting on the 14th that we wanted to focus on this evening. Did we have someone has joined? I heard the ding dong. Well, that was just you. Okay.
We're so excited to keep rejoining.
All right. Let's take a look at the minutes quickly. We had these distributed and everyone has reviewed them online or had the opportunity to review online. And Ashley has accepted the changes, so the document in front of us now reflects any changes that were submitted prior to what, noon today, Ashley? When did you?
I printed it at 4.
Okay.
I gave lots of time today.
All right.
I
I just want to call it, has everybody had a chance to review them, or do you think it makes sense to postpone this to next meeting?
Well, they were sent out to everybody.
Yeah.
That was my question.
I did a quick review. I didn't get into a lot of the details, but I did notice a few typos are still coming up.
Okay.
We don't have to approve them this evening. We can, if there's something that's
Was there a
specifically,
problem with them?
No, I don't know. I'm just saying if everybody hasn't reviewed yet, maybe instead of spending time while Scott's here going through them, maybe we do it quickly next time instead.
That's okay with me.
you, I know, reviewed them, didn't you? Oh, I thought
I was playing around with my photographs.
I guess that
Okay.
must have been.
I didn't either, so.
Let's do them next time then.
Okay.
Let's review them for next time.
All right,
there
so
seem to be several who
general
didn't
here, the consensus
do it.
seems to be that we will put off approval of these minutes until we meet on next week, next Monday on the 5th. So I'll put back on the agenda for discussion at that time. If anyone here has a change, however, don't wait till next Monday to point it out. Send that to Ashley so that if there's any changes, she can make those changes and get them to us.
Yes, boss.
Yeah. And I don't know who you received them from before, but we'll make sure that Louis is aware of that as well. Okay. There's no one present, so we won't be receiving any new applications tonight. Let's jump for just a second. I should have put the new business first because I think these items will be quick. And then we'll spend the rest of the meeting dealing with the articles. Under new business, remaining zoning articles to be reviewed. I listed the 3 that I believe we do need to review and have Scott review for us specifically and make the appropriate changes because these now need to reflect the kinds of changes that we've been making in our other districts that we've made for the industrial district and for the planned industrial district. Since we did the planned residential, we need to bring the planned industrial up to match that and in terms of identifying the procedures that need to be followed specifically, one of the big areas. Then the non-conforming uses. Thought we should probably take a look at that. I don't know, and Mike's back here. Whether, Mike, there's anything specifically in the non-conforming uses that you may already be aware of that you'd like for us to spend some time taking a look at.
No, nothing in particular.
Okay, nothing in particular. Okay. Now the other articles that I listed below are articles that we haven't reviewed. But do we really need to spend a meeting more going through each of these unless there's something specific that someone is aware of that we should address? And I'm also then directing that to you, Mike, in terms of these other articles, the zoning permits, description about the zoning commission, how to deal with amendments, the board of zoning appeals. We did review that one a few years ago. Enforcement, severability, and repeal. And of course, all the new ones that we've adopted in the last year.
I think
So-
the only reason to review any of those would be if ORC has changed something.
Yes, and I was going to direct that to Scott. The articles under that subheading, remaining articles that will not be reviewed. Scott, are there any of those as you would look at them that, and I would suggest maybe or ask that if you take a look at them, if there is anything that you're aware of that's ORC changes that we need to bring these up to date, then we would like to do that.
I'll check, but I'm not aware of anything that has changed,
Okay,
except for that whole, notification allowing electronic notification instead of printing in.
Papers.
oh,
I
yeah.
think as long as you reference that you're putting it in the paper,
Um,
I think that counts. I mean, doesn't,
I don't know, is that in the article 26 under the zoning commission?
I think it's under amendments.
It's under amendments? Oh, yeah, that would make more sense where it would be. So that would be one change that we maybe should go ahead and address. But it's a simple thing. If it says requires the advertisement in the public newspaper, we'll take that out so that we're not telling ourselves that we're still required to do that.
Well, reference it differently. Make sure it doesn't say printed. Make sure it just says
Yeah. Would
publicized.
you do that? Then take a look at that and put the language in there that would match now what the ORC requirement is. Okay?
Yep.
That would be then out of this list. That's the only one that we're identifying that, and we can then put it in with the others. Okay, Scott will review.
The only other thing I would look at is if we're gonna look at non-conforming uses and we make any significant changes to that, that might have some bearing on the Article 28 BZA. It's really their purview. So I wouldn't say we have to look at Article 28 until we go through Article, 24? And if we make any changes that have an impact on how the BZA deals with non-conforming
Fair
uses.
point, yes. That could produce a reason for making a change in the BZA article.
But I wouldn't move it up until we had a chance to look at Article 24
Okay,
and
the only one we'll move up at this point then is Article 27.
because we know that there's,
Yes, because we know that there needs to be a change there. Okay. All right, thank you very much. And under old business, now you were given copies of the revised, the ones that we'll actually be reviewing next week. That, and I think I sent that out with a request that if there was something that should have been changed that wasn't, that you would point it out. So as far as I'm aware, Scott got everything, and the version that we will be reviewing at our hearings next week will be the versions that we would, unless we find something we need to change, we'll be moving forward following the hearing to the Board of Trustees for their action. There's not a hard copy here tonight, I don't think. We didn't produce new hard copies, but we will have them next week.
Of which ones?
The articles 12 and 14. The ones that will be going to the trustees, we'll have those hard copies at our meeting next week.
Good. Scott did produce a hard copy on the 15th, which was after the meeting that we had on it, so we do have new things just to check. We have both the red line and the corrected version that Scott released on April 15th. Which was,
Articles 12 and 14.
yeah,
Yeah, Scott did do those,
Yeah.
right?
and we
But
do have hard
I don't
copies.
think Lisa printed them tonight.
Ashley.
Land district, non-conforming uses. Yeah. But did you print that at home?
No, I got it from Ashley.
Ashley sent it out. Well,
I did come in early and get it.
Too.
Yeah,
Thought I had them printed and never read it.
yeah, you gave it to me early because I knew I,
Well, you always like to have hard copies,
Did it?
but I did send it out electronically.
Yeah.
To everyone and say, take a look at it to make sure that we got everything in there.
I
was
reviewed
the only
it.
reason
I
for it.
reviewed it, what you sent out. I didn't see any concerns.
any new issues.
That was just me.
That's good for me.
We're-
Everything
we're not
matched
looking-
what I had.
We're not looking at it for the purpose of making any additional changes. It was just checking to see that if there's anything that you expected to be there that wasn't, you'd point it out.
But if everybody saw it on the shared document, do we really need to print it out again and waste another tree or two?
I don't need it.
That's the reason I didn't ask for it to be
C1,
printed.
C2 has been printed about 17 times. I don't think we. need
Right,
another
exactly.
edition.
That's why I didn't want it printed again. We'll have to have a copy when we have our meeting next week at the hearing. So that will be the copy that we will expect to move forward.
I know Brittany's looked at it, Joni's looked at it. I think
Scott looked at it.
Scott looked at it. I
Well-
think that's plenty.
I noticed one thing.
Uh-oh.
Oh, you noticed one thing already. Okay.
What's noticed?
All right, Scott, what's the one thing?
The title of C1 is Neighborhood Office District, and the title of C2 is just Neighborhood Commercial. So it needs the word district. added
Oh, my
to
God.
the title.
Okay, so the titles need to be adjusted appropriately.
I mean, all the others in the whole book are.
All right, thank you.
Fuel detector, engine 451 at 5151 Rain Brook Road. CO detector, engine 451 at 5151 Rain Brook Road. S3 to unknown intent will respond on X5. Monmouth 1948.
Okay, so any firemen have to leave? All right. Well, thank you, Scott, for pointing that out to us, because I'm not sure that any of the rest of us picked up on it. At the title.
Well, I did.
Okay. Go back to Article 22, signs and billboards. At our last meeting, we began reviewing and Scott has submitted a copy to us that we discussed at the last meeting. And then we closed the meeting with the idea that we would focus primarily on sections 21. But for the two sections, like we're probably most concerned about.
Get them on. As the signs or what.
Well,
Just haven't done that one. You're reading on the A and the B.
Start.
We got hung up on permit sign not requiring a permit. And to address, like Mike said, just 2201.
so is there something in the political signs or posters that you needs to be addressed, Mike?
Yeah, we can. It's worse than by taking that. No. In fact, if you look at, in their state. I would rewrite that.
That's the same, sign is different.
Well, since I- we have this whole section to review, but the primary thing that we said we wanted to focus on tonight, so that we could provide some guidance to the BZA, was on 2204, A and B. But you haven't see things that the main question at the moment. The first paragraph of the 28 were resolution instead of section. Is there anything else in that paragraph that needs to be addressed?
Sorry, what did you start with?
Where?
Yeah, where are you start, are you not,
I don't know where
are we
you are.
not starting with the definition at the top? No.
Well,
Mr. Chairman,
we can go back up to that, to the
We already
definition.
addressed that.
Well, that's all new. That's all,
Yeah,
that's all
The
new stuff
definition
from
is new.
Scott.
Yeah, I thought we'd start at the top, but
Unshare button or stop sharing button.
So Scott, the definition, did you get that from some,
there, well, you don't have a definition.
right?
No,
And since we had talked about Genoa a few times, I borrowed part of theirs. There was another section that wasn't, we could talk about some other time, but I mean, the first sentence is very basic. And then the second sentence seems to help with the things that you had talked about last month or last time with the pancake breakfast and the things that are temporary but celebratory and here and there. And just having a blanket statement that says things like that aren't even considered signs. And again, that's borrowed. And I know it's not just that Genoa did it, but they did go through a lengthy process to come into better conformance with the court case from like 8 years ago or something. But so that was what that second sentence was trying to
Okay.
capture. That way you didn't have to say, I mean, you're not going to require a permit for little temporary signs like that, I don't think. So you just don't even call that
Like,
don't even call it a sign.
signs for the purposes of trying to regulate.
like, for example,
Noodle dinner,
a birthday sign,
birthday
that
sign.
stuff that people put in their
Yard
yards, happy
sales.
birthday. 40, 40,
Congratulations.
Brittany's 40.
Yeah.
I'm not. But like, is that like that kind
It
of the
sneaks up on
idea
you.
we have?
Yeah.
Okay.
we're working on the subdivision section.
Nope, we're up at the definition.
no, we jumped back up to
Definition.
the word sign and the definition.
In the new stuff. that
Started
was-
at
So,
the top. We didn't.
That was new. Scott worked on that and has presented it to us, and I did not start there, but Brittany says, let's start there, and
Yes,
I don't see a reason not to.
absolutely.
If we go through the others and then come back. So first, if we can't agree on what a sign is, I guess we would have an issue. What constitutes a sign? Well, here's the definition for it.
Does right of way need to be capitalized? No.
We typically don't. Text. So let me pull this up. So this is Ivy Ridge. And they have a signboard on each side of the entrance. And the signboard on the west side had a logo on it, and the signboard on the east side had nothing on it. They took it down about a week ago, and then they put it up with the same logo. So Brittany, how do I get this on there?
Well, you have to share your
Double click it.
You have to share your screen.
I don't know his name. That's all.
Oh,
They're gonna make you wear a name tag.
It's fine. I'm just gonna.
It's already shared. Right? Or whose is that?
To share.
I can read that. Now, what's the point?
Well, we're jumping around, so now Tom's jumping us to something else.
well, but
What he's bringing, what, it's
no,
not,
but this is emblems, and I was considering a sign words. Nothing else. If it doesn't have words, it's not a sign.
Really?
I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, I don't
Well,
think
so
so
I'm
either.
gonna show you what's out there in the township now. In terms of signs that have no words, and do we want to regulate that sort of thing?
Probably.
Yeah. It's a sign.
it has been regulated in the past. If you don't regulate it, who knows what you might end up getting?
Well, you get that.
Is that hanging from a chain? What
That is art.
I was gonna say, I think it's attractive. That's.
That's not the point.
Doesn't mean when we say regulated that the sign it can't exist. It just means that there are some standards that would be applied to it.
Sure, good with that. I'm okay with Scott's definition.
That is that just free hanging?
Well,
Don't look at it.
It's hanging there on chains, I think.
there he's got it up on the,
What is that? A hand? Is that a flame?
Bob was asking about is now up on the screen that we can see in the front. Is it up there?
No idea what that is.
Don't know what it
Probably
is,
a leaf.
but it looks okay to me.
That is at the entry to Ivy Ridge. Now
It doesn't look like a
they,
plant or leaf or anything.
what you're looking at is a replacement of, they had an entry area there. I can't remember exactly what it looked like. There was no words on it. But after the street went in, they had some kind of a marker on both sides of that street that was been there for however long Ivy Ridge's the street has been in existence. They tore that down 3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago. Like,
It was pretty recent.
I know it was fairly recent, but then they put this up. And because they put this up, I'm not sure how it happened. Did they come to you and they got,
No, I went to them because they threw that thing up and then one side used to have something hanging that said Ivy Ridge.
oh, because they had words on it?
I told them they had to take it down. And they came in at one point to the BZA to go through the process of asking for a variance. And the guy that initially started it with me didn't show up the week that he sent 2 other people in there and they didn't understand what was going on. They got flustered. And I haven't seen him since. And then they kept that sign up and then I got a hold of the guy again and said, look, you're in violation. I'm gonna push the point. So that's when he took the one sign down with a word on it.
Yeah.
And then said the other one's art, which I bounced off Corey, and of course, Corey said, yes. You wanna fight that battle, you better put it in here. And then I think he had a blank one up there for a while. Is it still blank?
No, they took it down, they put the logo, the same logo that
Same
was on
logo on the other side?
the other side, they put it up a few days ago. they knew we were working on sign.
So it's, what we had up on the screen before
Yes,
is now the same thing on both sides.
correct.
There's no Ivy, doesn't say Ivy Ridge on it anywhere.
It just
Now, the
has-
other thing that we should point out, so that everyone's aware of it, is there was this, I don't remember what the name of it is, up there on Harlem Estates, maybe that's the name. Is that it?
Yeah.
They wanted to put up a sign, and they came to BZA, didn't they? And they were
Before I got there,
denied.
the BZA turned them down.
The BZA turned it down.
And then you have that place that's across the road from it, that's got about 6 houses or maybe 4. And they had a big sign up front on 2 big pillars that said Oak something. But I made them take that out. In fact, the guy was at the BZA. He was gonna be an auditor at the BZA. He cut it out the next week. So I told him he couldn't have a sign there that said Oakstone, I think, or something like that. So you force people to take signs out that have writing on it. Whether we want that or not, I guess that's why I ran across you guys, because the BZA seems to be. They're saying that any sign that comes to them based on their guidelines, they pretty much have to shut down. And I don't know if that's what we want, that's what we want.
I think that's what we're trying to hammer out now.
Yeah, I was gonna say, personally, I don't
Okay.
care, I just need to know.
I mean, here's another example of a sign that has no words.
But our new definition of sign includes emblems. and symbols and
Illustrations,
images.
shapes, emblems, symbols, which I think is appropriate, because I think that is something that we want to regulate. So in the instance of the art, it's no longer art anymore, it's a sign. Once we have the appropriate definition, right? But
Yes. I
if
mean,
we adopt this
The
after
the
that,
definition
that's
will
already up,
provide the
so-
guidance that the BZA is looking for, I
Yeah.
think, at least in part.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with Brittany, I think we need to say that those are signs. Just because otherwise we're gonna end up with all sorts of creative stuff all over the entrances here. I really think we need to have something that we decide, or whoever decides, that's kind of conforms to what Harlan Township's looking for, or willing to accept at any one of those developments, because we're gonna start getting developments.
Yeah, well, they're definitely going to be coming.
I know conservatory probably gonna have to start in the fall, conservancy down there. Cause they're running out.
Well, the one thing that stood out to me also when I looked through Genoa Township is I saw nothing in there that gave responsibility for basically monitoring signs, except the authority given to the zoning inspector. The zoning inspector basically issued the permit, zoning inspector made the decisions. Nothing ever went to the BZA that unless I overlooked it, but I saw nothing in there that made any reference to the BZA for anything about signs, except what would normally be the case if you issue if the zoning inspector were to issue a violation, they can appeal that.
Yeah. If I tell them they can't, they can go to the BZA, which is fine as long as what the guidelines we want spelled out. I mean, if it's perfectly spelled out, that's how I do it now. I sit them down when they ask for something, I say, this says you can't do that. So you can't do that. You have 2 choices, zoning commission, BZA. I'm saying no. And if you spell it out there, if they come in and it hits all the guidelines, sure, I have no problem controlling that and saying, yep, that follows the guidelines.
Oh, when you're looking at the definition, so coming back to that, the wording that Scott has presented, what do you think of this as because as Scott's pointing out, currently, we don't have a definition in our zoning resolution for the word sign.
I mean,
You want this definition? You want to work on it? You want to offer any questions or comments? Mike, you've got a copy of it, right?
Got a copy. I think I might have a wrong copy.
should say 417 at the top.
You're saying the red is what you're saying?
The red at the top for the word sign, yeah, that's new. it's not currently in Article 4, but it's now being proposed as a definition for the word sign.
So this would not include anything like a statue or a, bird bath or, something along those lines.
No.
Okay.
Someone puts that in their front yard. Is that what
Yeah.
you're thinking about? Yeah.
Shapes though. Shape.
Well, and people, a lot of people put up decorations at Halloween. They put up decorations for Christmas.
Yeah, that would come
But that
under
goes-
the,
Gifting.
that would come under the
Typically
second
erected
part.
seasonally
Yes.
or for-
So but what I mean is right now that's identified here, that they would be excluded.
Mhm.
They would not be assigned.
So how does this, I mean, where it talks about directly or indirectly if fixed directly or indirectly upon any part of a building, structure, lot, or tract. You're saying it's not just, it doesn't have to just be fixed in the building, it can be somewhere else on the lot.
Sure, right.
That was not clear to me after I'd read it 2 or 3 times. We're saying either on a building or on a separate post or.
Well, as far as the definition goes, then if you want to regulate walls
yeah.
versus monuments, then you do that in that district. You could have either or you could have only one, but that doesn't mean that the definition has anything.
Yeah.
That it hurts it one way or the other.
I guess I'm not ready to go along yet with, and I've only got 1 vote out of 5, so it doesn't really matter. With defining signage so broadly that anything on the building or on the property of any sort, whether it's selling something or just identifying something, is technically going to be a sign and has to conform. I mean, there are, I don't have a photograph, but there's a barn down on Smothers, a horse farm, that has a horse over the horse door. The silhouette of a horse. What are we trying to regulate in that case? What are we trying to prevent?
I think you're always going to have some interpretation. And in that case, you're going to say, I mean, I know an attorney might not want to hear this, right? But I mean, that's a barn, that's a horse, that's not a sign. I mean, I guess it's easy. 99 people would probably say that.
So
Probably
this is,
one attorney who wouldn't, but
this is a theater and they have, the theater symbol of the theater.
well, it's existing. So we're
Well,
glad that we're not going to have to deal with it. But I mean, if a new theater went in and it was on a commercially zoned piece of property, and that was the sign they wanted to use, I would say you could regulate that as a sign.
But then could you regulate the horse on the horse barn? Be the same thing, or a coffee cup on
Well-
a coffee shop. I've seen coffee shops that have an emblem of a coffee cup with
Well,
steam.
It would depend, because over here you would say in a commercial use, you get this much square footage. If you go over to your A1, you're gonna say, well, there's no sign regulations in A1. I mean, defining it as a sign doesn't mean that it's banned from everywhere unless you regulate it. That's just my thought. I'm not a pro in signage, but
So if you just have your house number attached to the front of your house, that's a sign?
no.
No, because there's provisions in there to talk about that, at least
Okay.
In our old zoning, it said, those are required signs, actually.
So it is a sign, we're not
It's a
gonna,
sign, but it's required,
we're not
yes.
gonna regulate it out of existence.
Yes. Those are required signs that don't need a permit.
Let me ask you this, Scott. What prompted you to come up with the definition for sign?
The fact that you don't have a definition for signs.
Yeah.
Is it there in other? In other words, what's the sign, what's the definition in Genoa? Is that in the, I don't recall reading it. That they have a definition for the word sign. Genoa or any of the other.
That's, I mean, that their definition is longer than that, but that is their, I would say that's part of their definition. That first sentence
Okay.
or two.
Like it's general enough that it can cover things that, anything that might come up. And then kind of like Mike mentioned, the rest of the article helps identify what's regulated and what's. So it's probably better to keep it general. Unlike
For the definition.
Michigan Genoa Township definitions that got very, very granular about every single kind of sign. I don't know if we want to go into that.
Well, they've got, yeah, they have that table, you know. But the word sign may be defined in their separately in a definition article.
Mhm.
I didn't bother to look.
I didn't bother to look either.
But Scott says, yes, they do have one. So for our purposes, whatever we would finalize as a definition, that becomes then what would be determined to be a sign in Harlan Township.
Which may or may not be regular.
Depending on what
Yes,
district you're in.
because there's some that is specifically no permits required.
I mean, I may get more comfortable with it over time, but it seems to me that we're throwing a very broad net out there and saying everything we see that's not part of the structure is a sign. Whether it's they intended it as a sign or not. And then we'll go back and we'll say, but we don't care if you have that kind of sign. It's still going to be a sign. So it just seems we may be making more work for ourselves by casting this broad net and then saying, yeah, but even though we netted it, we really don't care about it, so don't regulate. So we
Well,
should move
write
forward.
a definition that you think would work.
Yeah, well, I would make it a one sentence, but let's move on and if we come back, if we see as we move through the resolution, the article, that this definition works, then I'm okay with it.
Okay.
Question to follow where Tom's at is on that second sentence, it's this definition will not include a whole bunch of things which are incidental to an individual product, not necessarily used as a sign. And I don't know what that means. Not to be stupid, but as I read that, what is something that's incidental to an individual product, but not necessarily, not customarily used as a sign? Because I go to your horse on a barn, I don't know that's a sign. I mean, I'm wondering what this definition is supposed to catch. I mean, it seems, the wording is interesting and I'm not an attorney, so I'm with you, Tom, looking for a simpler version, but what does that, it's intentionally worded a way to exclude something. What's it intentionally excluding?
That's the way I read that. What primarily is saying it's excluding Christmas decorations or something like that. Because it says that toward the end of that same.
Well, yeah, then it goes into, nor shall they pertain to any such items.
Any such items primarily displayed for celebratory or decorative purposes.
Yeah, well, and because it says, which are primarily displayed for celebratory and or decorative purposes, well, a horse on the barn would decorative purposes.
Yeah, true.
Well, that's
It's
where I'm
excluded.
going, as I look at that, because it
Yeah.
does this first section that says, nor shall they, and I'm like, well, what's the first part of this? Individual product not customarily used as a sign.
I mean, that
I have
would
a star
also,
on my barn.
I think that would also catch addresses. It should probably have the word identification in there somewhere. I don't know about why the word product is, because product seems to open the door to
Commercial.
something you'd think would be a sign. Advertising a product,
Yeah, advertising a product becomes a sign.
but identification could possibly open that door too, but it gets more at, here are some things that you have to have on your house. I mean, you have the
So-
thing on there that tells the newspaper that you're getting a newspaper. That's not gonna be a sign, but it is potentially a letter on a shape.
It's
on
a,
your
it's a
mailbox.
W on your mailbox.
Yeah.
Actually, it's a D,
Depending on your,
D for dispatch.
It's look like a W.
maybe, depends on your
Anyway.
paper.
What paper do you get?
I don't get anything delivered to the mailbox.
Westerville.
But if we're saying for identification, that's typically numbers, maybe even a street name. Family name.
I just know that you have to be very careful to not regulate the message. And so you have to be very broad about, I mean, it's all about the structure and the size and location and not what it says on it. So. But you don't want every single little thing to be a sign, because then you're A, over regulating, and B, you're setting yourself up to have a difficult time of.
Yeah, well, I agree. I mean, that's not what we're looking to do. We don't want to overkill here.
Sure, but when under every district, it says except for those things noted in Article 22, no sign is allowed except for sale for rent. So you're saying no sign is allowed, but there's no place where you're defining sign.
Yeah.
And again, it goes back to, we think we all know what a sign is when we see it,
Yeah.
but
It's kind of what it is, yeah.
Well, that's why it was kind of nice that any sign that was a question would go through the BZA and then they could beat it to death in there.
They don't want to do that. They don't want to spend their time.
Well, it's not so much that they don't want to do it. They want to have guidelines to say, this is what we can and can't, because there's signs that people are coming in with that I think they'd be open to. But they're saying, based on these, we can't do it. I think if we had some kind of conformity, some idea of what we wanted. And again, like I said, if you wanted to take that totally away from them, a set of guidelines and I do it all. Hey, so be it.
Well, at this point,
If you get into 2204 here,
yeah,
so it has taken out a lot of that stuff. That was probably preventing the BZA from doing some things.
and that's what I was going to suggest that we do, is go ahead and take a look at, and I like Tom's idea that potentially, as we think about the definition, as we continue to move through, maybe it will help us in terms of getting clarity about the need for the definition of the word sign. So if we move forward from the definition and look at the paragraph that's been added, freestanding signs, heretofore lawfully erected and maintained and now in place may be maintained until such sign is destroyed, dismantled, or removed. No sign shall hereafter be relocated, rebuilt, enlarged, extended, or otherwise altered except through conformance with these regulations. That's basically getting to the point where anything that was there is being essentially grandfathered until it's abandoned. basically. Anything wrong with that statement? Anything you want to change? All right, now we're not looking at section 2202 or 2203 tonight. But we are gonna look at 2204, and that's what Joni was just bringing
Yeah.
our attention to.
But before we move on, I guess just the word freestanding eliminates signs that are affixed to a building. And I would say if we're gonna allow one sort of sign, we should allow anything that's in the township now. So rather than restrict it to freestanding.
Just say signs.
Signs.
Okay, I don't have an issue with that. Your point's well taken. Signs heretofore lawfully erected.
So I would go back to the sign in front of the Harlem Road Church. Got a sample of that, if I can figure out how to do this.
Your files at the bottom. The one you want it.
And where are they? Nope. Okay, churches.
Yeah, the Harlem Road Church did change their sign recently. I noticed that.
It's been a while now, not that recent.
No, it was, I don't know, within the last couple of years, maybe, but
Yeah.
it wasn't, I don't think it was this year. Harlem Road Church.
All right, so they struggled with the BZA in terms of, because what they had out there was a sign with movable letters. Manually movable letters. And they originally wanted to have electronic signs so they could change the message every week where they,
Oh, so they wanted a message board.
but this is what they ended up with, which is on the same footprint as it was originally, same distance from the road, about the same size, I think. No electronics. Very little lighting, I think, at night. And it's got one message, that's all it says, doesn't change.
It's really the same thing, Westerville, trailer park down there is going through them right now. They're bringing up another sign and it's basically replacing the old one, but it's gonna be just like that. It's gonna be set if they approve it.
So this is clearly a sign by anybody's definition. It identifies what's on the property, it's got words, it's got a logo or you know, some kind of graphic. And it's meant to be seen from the road and say, you're here, this is what's here. It's a sign. Should we have made it as difficult as we did for them to rebuild the sign that was there? I'm looking specifically at that word rebuild. So the rest of it is, you know, relocate, enlarge, extend it, but they just wanted to rebuild it. Because it was done.
Well, if they wanted to go towards some electronic thing, that's not necessarily a rebuild. We have in other places that you're not supposed to do electronic signs.
Well, it wasn't going to be flashing or anything. It was just that they could change the letters from inside the building. They wouldn't have to go out and put manual letters on underneath a. It would just be, you know, you could type it on a keyboard and it would show up on the sign. So I. But that's one example, I think, of how this would play out in real life. That it would still give them heartache about. They wanted to take what was turning into an eyesore into something nicer.
I think the sign they ended up with looks nice.
Agreed.
But it took them 2 years.
Yeah, but I mean, like you were saying, they would want to put something out there with changeable letters, flashing sign, whatever. I don't think we want that in the township.
Changeable
I think
letters.
that is right along the lines of what we want to see.
I mean, this was a good improvement, but something being rebuilt could also be a disimprovement, depending on what they proposed. So I think that if something is going to have to be rebuilt, it should have to follow the new regulations. Otherwise, you could end up in a
Yeah, I
worse
don't,
situation.
Okay,
I guess I read it and don't see why it would be a concern. Honestly, otherwise altered except through conformance with these regulations. So,
and I take your point that we're saying if the new sign conforms to the new regulations, we're good.
Good.
yeah, we're
And it
good.
shouldn't be
Yeah.
such a lengthy process.
And even if potentially they could do a message board kind of a sign, if we had that as permitted sign somewhere else in the regulation.
Okay,
Right now, I can't say whether we're gonna have that or not, but potentially we do. I mean, obviously, we've got one out front here, which is currently would not meet our regulations.
but it's exempt because it's government.
But it's
That's what I was
exempt
gonna
because
say,
it's
is that a government?
It's government and it's, I think there was something about. I don't remember, somebody said something about it being a fire or police department, they're also exempt.
And that's part of
They're
government too,
Regulations,
yeah.
They're government.
Schools.
They're all government run.
Okay, let's go on to look at, under permitted now, the first paragraph. Is there any other wording in there that anybody thinks needs to be addressed?
I just want to call out, we don't have to talk about it now. 2201, the first paragraph, the purpose. There is some wording in there that I might like to adjust.
Oh, I thought we were already past that. You're going back to the beginning.
No, I don't, because
Wait a
I
minute, tell me
don't,
where you are.
no, I don't know what I want it to say, but I don't think I like how it's said now. So I will circle back on that. Just wanted to let everybody know.
Under
that I think we need to
2201
make
for
some
purpose?
Adjustment.
That paragraph?
Yeah. So
Okay,
we will come back to that.
That paragraph doesn't bother me at all.
Well, there's some wording that's, I think we just need to clarify. And so, we'll
All right.
circle back.
if there's no one that wants to redirect us to another location, let's look at 2204. And that first paragraph.
And then where to put it?
I don't have a problem with that first paragraph.
All right. See a lot of scribbles on your sheet there, Tom. Do you have something you want to point out to anyone? All right,
Tom,
then,
are you looking at the new stuff?
This is 314,
over here,
417.
that one.
or maybe I'm not.
You're not looking at the
24.
one we're.
This is the one this is the one we're looking at.
Yeah,
Tom.
all right,
Yeah,
but this is where I've got my notes. So,
that's where
okay.
your notes are, yeah.
All right, so this is this.
2204.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same paragraph, but there are minor changes that were made.
And residential subdivision identification signs.
Okay, so we're finished with that first introductory paragraph, and then we've got all these things that are deleted into A, all these paragraphs dealing with billboards.
Yep.
Is all deleted.
Yep.
Okay, and then on the second page, and I'm talking about the document dated 4/17/2025. You've got A, residential subdivision identification signs. That gets us back to Ivory Ridge.
So let me bring up Keller Pines. Subdivisions, okay, so. Keller Pines.
Keller Pines was a planned residential district. It had its own sign regulation put in.
That's what I was gonna ask.
Yes, but it's still typical, there aren't that many subdivisions, so it's probably the only major subdivision sign that we actually have. And that is here. There it is. So it's on a large piece of rock. And it says Keller Pines.
Yeah, it's kind of like a monument type sign.
And that was approved in their planned district.
That's fine. Would it be so it wasn't written into the resolution, it was simply part of a plan, got approved, and off they went.
Yes, that's the way planned
Yes,
districts work.
that's exactly what happened with the PRD. I think it took them a long time to get their
It was
PRD approved.
a very long time. for
But they
Keller
did get it
Pines.
approved. Now, this language, residential subdivision identification signs, I mean, if it were adopted, this would apply. And it would also be where we would start in terms of what a planned district might be proposing. They could start with this, but they didn't necessarily have to meet this requirement if it would get approved through the planned district process. The signage, I mean.
I guess the question everybody has for me in that, and they get it, I tell them, hey, that was approved in a planned district, but so are we saying everybody in the township can put signs like that up? I get it, it was approved through a planned district, but since we approved it for them, why can't?
Well, we approved smaller lot sizes and all kinds of things for them because it was a planned district.
Yes, but why, if we're not okay with signs like that, the question to me keeps coming up is, why did you allow that one? Even though it was a planned district, if you don't like signs and you don't want people to have signs like that, why would you approve it? Even though it's in a planned district, because I mean, who approved that planned residential district?
The zoning commission.
Zoning commission approved.
Exactly.
Isn't that what
But-
we're trying to resolve?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know if it's that we don't want signs. I think we just don't have the right regulations. Or the
That's-
right document,
And that's what we need, that's
So
what we need
that's-
to get to.
right?
Well, looking at the language that we have here now, residential subdivision identification signs. This would address that. For any other subdivisions, including the one over on Harlem Road, Harlem Estates, including the one down here for Ivy Ridge, or any other areas where there's a quote subdivision identification that is desired. So how's this language?
So Scott, a question for you, where it says residential subdivisions which are platted in accordance with the Delaware County subdivision regulations. To me, that means they're not planned district. They don't have to go through the planning process. They're platted. They follow the rules. You approve them and they're done. And we don't get to,
No, planned districts are platted as well.
so how would the wording of this does not require the district be a planned district for these rules to take effect,
Correct.
Correct.
right? I mean,
Because if they're planned, they go through the process
Yeah.
and get their plan approved,
but
plan approved.
these would be unplanned or without going through the planning process.
Right.
Like Ivy Ridge or Harlem Estates.
Whether we would still get those now or not is a question. And maybe once we have sewers, it'll loosen up a bit. All right, so we're not talking specifically here about a subdivision going through the planning process. Is any subdivision planned or not? Platted, but
Right. anything except the person that divides off 5 flag lots and then decides to put a sign out front, they still can't do that because that's not really anything that anybody recognizes as a named project.
What about one that's like advertising? Like people that have horse riding barns, they could have like, giddy up stables.
That has nothing to do with residential subdivision identification signs.
Mike, as you read this, the language that's here, would that be helpful
Yeah,
for the BZA?
yeah, I'm good with that.
But, I'm saying that now because currently, there's a lot of things that go to the BZA. I'm thinking in the future, I don't know where we'll end up with this, but I wanted to take the BZA out of it, basically.
Well, I mean,
It could,
you got it underneath those signs requiring a permit issued by the Harlem Township zoning inspector. Right? That would be a residential subdivision identification sign.
Mhm.
So to me, I read that, that's coming to me.
yeah,
They would only go to the BZA if they wanted something bigger
Yeah.
or
Yeah,
Or
some
until
sort of
such time as it
variance.
would get adopted. I mean, the BZA could use this
Yeah,
potentially,
yes,
but it's until we were to actually change our signed article, it wouldn't necessarily be a requirement. But what we're hoping to do is that as we discuss this, that it could become useful until such time as the changes are adopted.
I do have a question. Are the Westerville Estates, the trailer park, is that considered a subdivision?
I think it would fall into your commercial. I don't know what I forget what it's.
it's all AR1.
Yeah, the zoning down there
Never
was
got
never
changed?
changed.
Oh,
Just one big AR1 property.
huh. Yeah.
Because it went in, I don't remember how many years ago, but it went in long before we had zoning.
Oh, yeah, it's in like the 70s. wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody have anything they want to look at in this wording here?
I
that
do want
you
to point
wanna-
out the way it uses the base, which I'm okay with for commercial uses, but I just put that in there. And that would fit the church again. If someone built a subdivision with the church sign, that would work because the base. It says the base at least equal to that of the main body of the sign. Which I would back that off and maybe put 80%. Well,
I'm not sure where you're reading.
it's the
Right
second
above the box.
second paragraph, right? Well, yeah, it's right above the box. Shall be affixed directly to a base having a width at least equal to that of the main body of the sign. So if we change that to 80% of the width, then the church sign would have been that same style. But I do think there's value in signs like this that don't necessarily have, and you probably have some more. You're holding back all these other pictures that you have.
Well,
I think you should go through them all so that we see
Well,
see what we like and what we don't.
there are a couple of hundred. I don't know if we want to go through them all.
I mean, I don't want to I don't want to suggest a regulation that sticks you with one sign design.
Mhm.
When you might like this because it's got pillars and it's not necessarily affixed to the ground, but it's not, I mean, people don't typically do the sign on a pole anymore, which is what, we were trying to get away from years
Well,
ago.
That was the pole type signage is hereby prohibited. So columns are not poles.
I don't
or,
see this. Where,
Page 23. Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one.
I mean,
Let's see.
technically, those pillars have a base. Equal to the width of
I
the
would-
sign.
I would say a pole sign is either a sign that's on top of a single pole, like back on a commercial strip on Morse Road, and everybody's got the dopey pole with a sign on top. That's what we're trying to get away from. But I don't mind a sign that, it hangs from from a
A single-
single post, but it's hard to write that, but I wanted to see what.
Or if you have, I mean, in New Albany, they have their kind of design standard is two
Yeah.
narrow posts,
Right.
4x4.
Which I wouldn't
6x6
call a
posts.
pole sign, but you could say between two posts.
Then it's got four. Kind of the logo of is the 4-rail horse fence, and they have those 4 rails behind the signs. That's great. I gotta stop looking at this version.
Please.
The one thing that I'm looking at the 417 version.
Yes,
That's the one that we're
yes.
make sure that we're all focused on the same one. If this were to go into effect, Ivy Ridge would not be in compliance. And originally they would be in compliance if no others, is they've got 2 signs. They got one on each side of the street as you enter. This says they would be limited to 1.
Yeah,
I
I think
don't- I
the
don't
first version
necessarily-
I handed out said on one or both sides of the street. And I changed it to 1 for this version, I think, because
And it doesn't bother me because you have traffic coming from 2 directions. They have the signs basically facing what you're looking at.
Yeah, they usually, if they're putting it on each side, they put them at an angle, so you're right. As you approach it, then you'd see the face of it.
What's
Well-
the negative to having one on either side?
Water.
Okay.
I can't tell what people are leaning toward. I was saying I provided 1 sign instead of 2. But then Mike gave hey, it's a good thing to have 2 signs. So I don't know that we're all agree on that.
Yeah, the difference is with 1 sign, you kind of have it facing the main road. With 2 signs, they kind of face the drive, or they're angled
Yeah,
towards
they
the drive.
usually are angled, yeah.
You know. I mean, but
So
certainly,
they're easier to read. You don't have to be shoulder you don't have to be up to the sign to be able to read it because it's parallel to the road. This one is, you can read it because it's facing the direction of traffic. It's 6 or more lots, I would make, I would allow 2. And
Right, 2.
and they can put 1 in the back of the development if they want, hidden away.
Well, that's per entrance, but.
Yeah.
So I'd be okay with 2.
I was
terms of-
thinking
Because
along
you've
the
only
same
got 3
lines
to
as
5
Tom, though, I
lots,
would think,
then
maybe we
that's
should
not
allow
gonna
for
be-
Yeah.
2 for 6 or more lots, but
6
1 for 3 to 5 lots.
Yeah.
I think that's what they just said at the same time.
Yeah.
3 to 5 is okay with 1, 6 or more would be 2.
And then 6 or more, 2. That's Mike?
And then the maximum square footage per sign face. I don't have the measurements on this Ivy Ridge sign. 4x8 is
That's that actual signage part, not counting the architectural structures that are there holding it. But that it's less than 4x8
I
for
think
sure.
so.
It's, yeah. I've seen it many, many times because I drive by it every day. It
Yeah,
might be,
it's like 3x5 or something like that.
yeah, something
3 by
like
5, 3
that,
by 6.
about 3x5.
So how do you decide that just that brown part in the middle is the sign and not the whole structure?
Oh, yeah.
That was another issue that the zoning, the BZA had, is they were taking that whole, they were trying to include the square footage of pillars and everything
Mhm.
into it. Not just the sign area,
So
which,
should we have another line? Cause this says sign face, which to me, sign face is the middle guy. Should we also have square footage of sign structure? Or like total sign square footage or something like that? Cause an entire sign like base and all is what the BZA was going over for the one that we just accepted. They were going by what the size of the base was, not by what it said on the sign, or what like the sign part was. Yeah, cause if
so, I mean, if we want to exclude that, that's fine, but do we want to put a restriction on how crazy they can get with putting a big sign at the end? I don't know why anybody want to put a lot of extra time and money into it, but I don't have a problem with the way that looks.
If you think about like, so on is it Red Bank Road? I think it's Harvest Winds or something like that. There's a neighborhood and their
Yes.
sign, they have like huge brick or
Yep, brick.
stone wall and then like
Brick wall. yeah.
little words or something like
Yeah.
that. Do we want to try and not have that kind of thing? Which then you would want to limit the actual sign, like total square footage.
I think the
versus just
wall
the
thing
base.
is just a decorative kind of thing, which
But they have like
doesn't.
4 walls
Oh.
of, it's like very large. I don't know if you ever
It
seen it.
is.
If you know what I'm talking,
Yeah,
you know what
yeah,
I'm
I know
talking
exactly
about.
what you're talking about.
Not
The
that it's
question is, do we want that in
unattractive.
Harlem Township? Do we
Yeah.
want that kind of a huge, especially if we're gonna allow them to do it on both sides?
It's pretty and it's well maintained, but yes, do we want? I don't know.
Sunbury does the same thing. I
Yeah,
don't know if anybody driving up 3 communities of Sunbury and communities of Galena. They have like a sign kind of written on a stone, like the one that we saw. It says these communities of Sunbury, and then it's like a waterfall with a huge rock structure behind it. I mean, it's massive. It is, I mean, it's larger than probably 2 of those tables put together. And then the one sign saying what community it is. So would you consider that whole thing the structure, or was that just decorative around that one sign?
there's nothing in what we
Kind of
have worded
landscape
here
feature.
that really
Yeah.
addresses the issue of the structure part that we're talking about. In fact, the way I look at it and I read it, if you read the end of it, it says that the sign shall be affixed directly to a base having a width at least equal to that of the main body of the sign. So potentially, doesn't say that can't be twice as big, 3 times as big, 4 times as big, 10 times as big. There's no limit on how big it could be, except to say that it has to be at least the width of the sign. So,
You're talking about the base could be much larger.
yeah, the structure that holds the actual sign.
And I don't know how you,
I restrict that.
yeah, I mean, again, it sounds silly. At some point, you just have to trust that.
Well,
that
I'm not
most people
suggesting, what I'm
yeah.
trying to point out is that they're not, the BZA has been thinking in terms of that, we say 4 by 8 or 32 square feet, that includes everything.
Yeah, exactly.
But this language here would not include everything.
It's hard. I mean, it's tough because if I saw that, I would say the sign is measured by the box on the inside, which has that wood background. And I wouldn't count the pillars. Some people may, and I've seen graphics in zoning codes before, and I can do one, but where you draw a square around just the logo, and that's where you get your square footage. Then I don't know how you limit the size of that rectangle. You either measure the rectangle or you measure the message. And at some point, you got to hope that if people are limited to 32 feet of message, they're not going to do the wavy brick wall that goes for 100 feet. But some
Well, they
people
might.
do that.
But they but technically,
Oh,
they
yeah.
could.
Even so, the wavy brick wall is more of a landscaping
Sure.
feature than a sign.
Yeah, that's,
And maybe for each is a certain square footage, then it's a structure. Then you can.
Very
can regulate.
Well, and I think where it becomes an issue is when it's not maintained and then it becomes an eyesore. So I don't know if we have any wording in here in terms of like maintenance or not allowing something to become an eyesore, but maybe that's something we want to put in here to limit
I
that.
think it's already in there.
Is it
somewhere.
already in there? Okay,
yeah, well,
okay.
I think that we want to make sure that that is in there, but it doesn't necessarily have to be right with this section.
Right.
Because that would be applicable to all signs.
Yeah, but I'll look into more to see what other newer sign codes do if they measure the structure versus the message, because I think, again, everybody's gun shy about restricting the message
Yeah.
and defining what that is.
Yeah,
So,
and I think Brittany had brought up the point that we have another line in this in this box, which is basically the size of the base. As opposed, we have maximum square footage per sign face, and then we have maximum square footage of the sign base. And that's just whatever the square footage is of those two pillars. And it's, you know,
I don't think we need that. That's just, you know,
I,
Are we-
requiring more stuff.
Are we limiting artistic opportunity?
We are limiting artistic opportunities.
I don't know.
Well, that's the reason I was pointing out that the language that's there doesn't have any maximum size, but it has a minimum size.
Yeah.
Which I think was what Scott originally mentioned is, do we want to make that, you know, at least 80% of the base so that like the Harlem Road Church one would be acceptable because it technically its base is a little bit smaller than the sign. So do we want to allow for a little bit smaller base than the actual sign base? I don't think it's bad. I don't,
Good.
you know what I'm saying? I don't. Might be nice.
Is there a need? And I guess,
for something bigger than, I don't think there's a need for it. I don't think it obviously, you know, that design was not looking at a base directly under the sign, where what we're talking about now is if the width of the sign base is 80% of the width of the sign itself. So you get a sign like this and then the base like this. You know, I don't have a problem with that. But I think something like this shouldn't be eliminated as a potential design.
I don't think it is it?
Well, I think I can word it so that it says or mounted between pillars or posts.
so
General.
Mhm.
are we thinking in terms of inserting that it would be the base having a width at least equal to, changing that to be
80%.
80%?
Yeah.
Okay. Eighty
Get
percent
a white.
equal to
Yeah,
that of the main
whiteboard
body of
next
the
time.
sign.
Right.
So the base, or however they decide to hang the sign, display the sign, isn't really being, we're not setting specific requirements for that. And
Which,
do we want
yeah,
to?
as long as you limit the height, then I think you're okay with letting the creativity be whatever it is.
Yeah,
Mhm.
You know, if it's not 15 feet high, then. they
I
can't
think we
just
do
stick it
want
on
to
top.
limit the height, yeah.
Yeah, we do have a limit, height here, max height.
Would that taller column be 6 feet? Or more?
Yeah, I don't know. I never stood next to it.
It's taller than 6 feet. That's probably like 8 foot tall at least.
Do we want to give them 8 feet on the 6 or more? Because the signs are going to be bigger. And the pillars would be maybe out of scale. We didn't give them a taller, we're not saying how wide it could be. Mass it has. I mean, I suppose if they had that sign and they just had 2 short pillars, one on each side,
It wouldn't be as eye-catching.
no, and they wouldn't have that bar across over the sign. I'd be willing to maximum height to give, instead of 6, to give them 8 on the 6 or more lots.
I think from a distance, that's not really as tall as you think that it might be. A lot of signs in these little samples I did of commercial signs are 8. And they don't look that high, that tall when you drive by.
So are you saying, let's go with 8 feet for both 3 to 5 and 6 or more? Or were you picking it for one or the other?
I was saying 6 and 8. Because
6 and 8.
6 or more lots would be 8 foot.
6 feet for the 3 to
Yeah,
5 and
because
8
the
feet.
inner
Yes.
part's gonna be bigger.
That's what I'm thinking too. Okay. All right, so.
Yep.
This looks reasonable, Mike?
Yeah.
Now, with the way we've discussed it?
I don't understand that last square, that last line.
Yeah, I don't,
Which last line? Maximum square footage, that one?
Yeah, what does that mean?
saw that
And-
somewhere else. I think it's when you have an HOA and you have those signs as you're leaving the neighborhood that says, we have a meeting on Thursday night or leaf cleanup.
Yes, they usually just put signboards or sandwich boards up.
It's, I don't know that it's that necessary, but
Yeah, I would scratch it.
I mean, you'd be on the back, so it wouldn't really be visible from the street, so they could do it and not be get in trouble.
I don't know that we need that line at all.
Yeah, so it's on there for the purpose of the residents when they leave to be able to read it.
But if their
Right.
signs are angled, you're not gonna be able to put anything on anything.
Yeah,
Well, that's their.
so we're just gonna take that last
Should've thought
one
ahead.
out. All right, so we're gonna delete that. Yeah, they could put up a temporary sign. All right. Okay, moving on to the next one, which is
So-
B, you
Yeah,
know?
so where B starts ground mounted signs identifying, et cetera. So the notes that I had here, residential, under the title of A, residential subdivision identification signs. Why did I change that to wall or ground mounted
Why do we need to specify?
signs?
I,
Because we talk wall or ground mounted in the commercial.
Yeah,
Well,
well,
somebody,
you're talking about, you're still referring to B now.
well, I was saying for A rather than simply saying identification signs, I would specify wall or ground mounted.
well, it says that in the second paragraph right there.
It's there, Tom. Such identification shall be limited to wall or ground mounted.
So I would use that wording in the,
No,
just a thought.
Why?
because we were talking about residential subdivision identification signs. As opposed to these industrial, commercial or office complex signs.
Whatever.
What other kind of sign do we have in relation to residential identification signs?
Wall or ground mounted, that's all there are.
No, but I'm saying, is there another kind of sign that you have in mind that could be interpreted to be included here? Like, why do you want it in the
In the title.
title?
I read
guess
that the
is what
same
it-
way Brittany does. There'd be another type underneath that other, would be a B or something would have that other group, right? Is that where you're headed?
Yeah, well, if there is like another group,
Well,
otherwise, what
that
does
just-
it matter? if
Makes it
they're-
sound like there's something other than just residential subdivision.
Okay,
And then this next section is dealing with, industrial, commercial, office complexes. So here, what Tom was, certainly suggesting is that would be wall or ground mounted.
Instead of just ground mounted?
well, I don't know,
Right now, it just says ground mounted, yeah.
7,
You want to put the word wall in there?
well, this is just ground mounted.
Be opposed to a wall mounted sign? Person? Is that a bad thing?
I think
I don't know.
in the overlay districts, I think there are wall mount signs all over the place.
I think you're right.
Yeah, I mean, that first draft had a section for ground mounted complexes and then individual blade signs for individual uses within those complexes. And then, yeah, I don't have a problem with wall or ground as long as it's not both.
Yeah.
But this doesn't have wall in it now. Ground mounted.
Back to the previous.
Well, we got,
About ground or
the reason it's ground mounted, because wall signs are identified, it's a separate paragraph.
Oh, it's letter C
Yeah, it's
that we
under
don't have
C.
here. Got it.
Um,
Whereas C,
Wall signs identifying industrial, commercial, or office establishments. That's paragraph C.
I only have 3 pages.
No, because
No,
we're
no,
only talking
I
about
know
A and
that.
B.
I'm saying, I'm not just,
Oh, right.
it
yeah.
wasn't included in that version.
It's the next,
It's the next paragraph. We never
don't-
went to that.
gotcha. Okay, so we really don't want to change this to wall or ground mounted because we deal with wall
Otherwise.
on the next page.
Yeah, the
Then we don't-
Yeah.
wall is in the earlier version, but it wasn't redone in this version.
Gotcha, correct.
Okay. Now,
Do we want to make this align with the residential and say that the base should have a width at least 80% of, rather than equal to the main body of the sign?
Yeah, I marked that.
Did, okay. 80%.
I just assumed that would work.
yeah, at least, and then we put the 80% in there again. At least equal to 80%.
I like that last sentence that's there. Such sign will be in harmony with the building on the site, yada, yada, yada. Does that make sense to also put in the residential sign?
I agree with that. I was just reading the same thing you did, and I thought, well, that's a
Nice,
good sentence to throw in there, because that was what we were discussing, whether we want something huge and gaudy there.
yeah,
If we could use that to say, not really in harmony with what you got going on here.
yeah. I think it's very general enough that.
Yeah.
It doesn't limit people, but gives you guidelines in terms of having it kind of be in,
Mhm.
go with the general look and feel.
I'll probably put it up under the first section. And then you want to repeat it under A?
I think that would be good to repeat it under A. Wait, what first?
Well, now, which ones are you adding that aren't there? The minimum distance of the side lot and also the
No.
minimum area?
No,
No,
I'm not sure. I didn't
It's
catch
the
what you were
sentence-
talking
the
about.
sentence, right?
The last
sentence.
in black.
Oh, okay. Such sign will be in harmony with the building on the site? There's no building on the site.
well, if it's a neighborhood, there's buildings.
Well,
So maybe you could say in harmony with the building.
With the
or
neighborhood.
The neighborhood or something like that.
Yeah. That sentence, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can't say the building on the site.
So you're gonna take out that whole thing about in harmony and just such signs will not detract from the appearance?
No, I think such sign.
Such sign will be in harmony with the,
The
Neighborhood, surrounding neighborhood.
the
Yeah.
aesthetic. of
with,
the-
the shall be in harmony
There
with
you
the
go.
residential neighborhood.
Okay,
Yeah. The
Not
aesthetic
detract
of the
from appearance
surrounding
of the general
neighborhood.
neighborhood
Okay.
in which it's
Beautiful.
located.
Love it.
Yeah.
With, I think that's a good addition, yeah. Okay,
What's that wording?
the
wording?
Scott will come up with
I may
something.
change it a little bit.
the wording,
Yeah, Scott will come up with
Well,
something.
just something for the minutes.
right now,
Something.
I'd say something like such sign will be in harmony with the surrounding residential neighborhood.
So we're gonna remove with the building on the site and make that fit more
Right, that's
into
the,
the residential neighborhood.
Residential, yeah.
That helps.
And I would
it will not
move-
detract from the appearance of the general neighborhood in which it is located or adversely affect property values in the area.
I'm not totally comfortable with that adversely affect the property values, but I'm not gonna. I would move the word general though, from in front of neighborhood to in front of appearance.
Oh, the general appearance.
Because you talk about residential neighborhood and then you talk about general neighborhood, it's
Such sign will be in harmony with
surrounding residential.
surrounding residential neighborhood and will not detract from the general appearance of the neighborhood in which it is located, period.
I would put a period there. Because you're gonna hire appraisers to say this sign is killing the surrounding neighborhood.
No, but at least this allows me to open a dialogue up with the person.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, now that,
It's not a
we're
good
talking
idea
about
to
that
have-
language for the residential piece. Now,
I can be
are
very.
you also, Tom, going to suggest that we delete it for the
Well, I
commercial
mean,
piece?
Mike is saying he wants to use it.
I do want to use.
I'm okay with.
So I would
leaving
leave it,
in.
I
I'd
think
leave
it's
it
a
in
good
both
idea to leave it
places.
in there because it.
Oh, I'm sorry, I
allows
missed that.
Me to open up the dialogue with the person if we're getting something I think's a little bit out of control or too big, or we don't think would look good. At least I can open up and say, it detracts.
If someone wants to hire appraisers, they can hire.
Yeah,
appraisers.
and if they
No.
want to fight me on it,
Sure.
I guess they come to the BZA can say, we agree with Mike.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad that you're bringing that to our attention.
Okay,
So we'll leave it in rather than take it out. For both residential and where it is now in the commercial. Okay, now what about the table? I got ahead of myself on the table before. This table has a couple of items in it that are not in the residential list.
I
No,
think
for this section, I like having that landscaping in around there.
I do too, but I don't know that we need that in the
No, probably not.
residential.
No.
I think instead of the word complexes in both of these locations, it should just say uses,
Okay.
because I think it would apply to a single use. And I think these sizes aren't out of whack for a single use.
what were you saying about complexes?
To not use the word complexes.
Uses.
Right there. Like.
I mean, I think that was,
Right here, changing complexes to uses.
And also in the heading.
Yeah.
And in one, in the box, you took out the word identifying. Just says signs for industrial, commercial, office uses.
where?
So in the box where it starts ground mounted signs.
Mhm.
And in the heading for under B, ground mounted signs identifying industrial, commercial, or office uses.
Yeah, complexes is deleted in both places, replaced
I'm
with
saying-
uses.
I'm saying uses,
Okay.
yes,
Put identifying back in.
or take it out.
Or-
And just say ground mounted signs for industrial, commercial, or office uses.
Which way do you,
The same way the box does.
yeah, either one is fine with me, going with the title of the
I see.
section or the title in the table. As long as they're the same.
I'll change the
That way they
title, that
match.
makes it shorter.
Or, okay.
Yeah, 4.
Okay.
Um,
I don't think you've had any issues with the industrial side or the commercial side yet, because we haven't had those in the township yet.
Yes.
so if we look at the box, we've got
We're going with
32 square feet,
4.
which matches the 6 or more lot residential sign.
Yeah, it's the same.
We've got 8 feet high, which is what we changed it to. It's further from the lot line and further from the right of way. Do we want to permit 2 signs per entrance,
No,
as we would with a larger residential development? For the
Not
same
really.
reason that they'd have diagonal signs
No,
on either side of the,
no.
I think they're gonna do it perpendicular to the road sign.
and it's one.
There's really no entrance. I mean, it's a road. It's closer to the street, so.
Okay.
And we've got the requirement for landscaping in this one. Around all sides in square feet, and then it specifies 50 square feet. Okay, everybody? All
I
right,
do have a question about how can we remove number 7?
What?
Number 7.
at the bottom of that
Bottom.
page, such freestanding sign will not constitute a traffic hazard.
Yeah,
Um, I don't know.
Because we took out all of them.
I'm going to guess that it's probably, is that addressed somewhere else in the document? That dealing with safety, a safety issue should be addressed somewhere.
Minimum distance from the side lot line, that you've got. And obviously, they're gonna have to be so far back out of the right of way. I don't have a problem with it being back in there. I don't know, Scott, what do you think? Is that
Well-
something that we think we need in there? Or-
There were several phrases like that that were like repeated every single time. That could just be captured under some kind of general statement.
I think that makes sense. I'm okay with that. We just have
I
to,
don't think it really fits in the table.
no,
No,
but we
that's-
just have to determine, I think it's a good thing to have in general. Maybe we just want to determine where to put it. And 3 pages. Okay, what else?
Well, now I'm going to suggest that we've got through 2204 A and B, that we now go back and use the time we have remaining to address section 2202, classification of signs. Now, you have to go back and look at your working document from 327 to find that language. And we did have some discussion about this, and I'm not sure if we agreed on it, but I've got one change that I've got notes about here under that. A, B, C. I don't have any notes of changing anything, but in D, those signs which are required pursuant to the regulations of section 2206.
Period.
I have a period.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so we did agree on making that change. All right, good. And then going forward, 2203 is the permitted signs not requiring a permit. We got hung up on this one the last time.
I don't know if we're ready for this one yet.
And
I'm not, because I haven't had a chance to.
We got hung up on
Read
the
this
real
one.
estate signs. And
yeah, we
should
got
they
hung
be-
up on the real.
Should they be
signs.
different for single residences, multifamily residences, or commercial properties?
Right.
Yeah.
And then I think, although Scott, we didn't ask you to prepare that for this meeting. I think had some conversation about having you taking a look at that and maybe breaking it down into single family versus multifamily. Did we not have that discussion?
Yeah. We did,
Are we still on real estate? Is that what
yeah.
Yeah. So if that's the case, then maybe you could do that and we can bring that forward at the next.
Yeah. Plus, we have to probably pretty much get rid of the section on political signs and temporary signs. They're not going to be considered signs anymore based on the definition.
That's what we leaned toward. Yeah, I mean, obviously 1 through 5 of political signs will come out. We'll just need to have some kind of phrase that says that township doesn't regulate political speech.
You still need something in there saying, keep them out of the right of ways.
Well, sure.
But there's no restriction on
And
how
that's
long.
another one of those phrases that's in there like 50
Yeah.
times, but it just needs to be in there hopefully more prominently, but only in one
Yeah.
place.
But that means they can be up full time. They don't have to.
Yep.
And you're not, is that,
Exactly what that means.
you don't have to take them down.
Nope.
But if they're in the right of way, they can get mowed
If
down.
they're in the right of way, they're gonna get taken out by the maintenance guy or me.
Any signs, right?
Any sign, well, there's a problem with that. I think we all know what that is.
HECA, or no, not HECA, Heritage.
Coming in today, I'm looking, I would go through Center Village in Harlem, Center Village in Miller Paul, and I'm going, seriously, guys? Right there, right away.
Yep.
Meanwhile, I'm across the street yanking down everybody else's signs. in
Well, they're not legal, and I'm not suggesting we make them legal.
They,
I just suggest we
They're-
get
they're-
whoever's putting them out,
they're
they'll
not-
quit doing that.
they're not, well,
All they gotta do is step across, like down there on the corner of Miller Paul, all they do is step across the ditch and put it on that side.
Yeah.
Just get it sent back.
How about, is there a
if we don't
way,
have
Mike?
one person doing it every time, it's
I
hard.
know, it's hard to get the word out to everybody. I get it.
um,
But they're not gonna be considered signs anymore. Under our definition of signs, those would not be considered signs anymore.
Wait,
I don't think we should take them out of not considered signs because there's all sorts of signs like that, like birthday.
Well, I-
parties.
are they not considered?
That's an interesting interpretation. I would not have, I wouldn't agree with that.
One-time non-commercial event.
Yeah,
It is a commercial event, though.
no, it's not.
We don't charge.
Nation only.
Nation.
No,
Whether it's
Then-
a one-time event or not, because it does occur monthly.
it's not just one time.
But
It
one-
happens 3 or 4 times a year.
But no, leaving the signs
It's a
up.
temporary thing.
But the signs.
But they should,
the
the
signs-
problem that we have is putting them in the right of.
That's it. As I was saying, it's not so much that it's a sign, it's what it says, just keep them out of the right.
Okay.
Because you have the same problem with political signs. If they go in the right of way,
they get
take them
taken
out.
too.
Good reason for a broad definition of sign that has a specific application.
So if they're, it's not that. It still would be considered a sign. Erected seasonally or for a one-time non-commercial event.
Like you guys discussed at the last meeting, you don't wanna take away the opportunity for people to advertise, like. The chicken noodle dinner, people wouldn't know about it. Just driving by if they weren't traveling past the Grange. So you don't wanna take away that advertising or, advertising for a new restaurant or. Something like that, as long as they're not.
So
leaving it
you're,
out like
you're
forever.
okay with putting any sign whatsoever in the right of way?
No, I'm not saying in the right of way, I'm saying signs like
Oh,
advertising signs.
Well, that's, but we're
being
talking
up.
about in the right of way is the issue, not the sign itself.
But you were saying like the one-time signs in general.
Oh. Well, that's a one-time non-commercial event.
Yes.
I'm not, s-
I was
that,
just saying
that
that you
means,
guys had kind of discussed
that is the
last time.
definition. If it's a one-time non-commercial event, it's not considered a sign. So they don't have to have a. It's
Yeah,
not
unless
be,
it's in
it
the
would
right
not
of
be
way.
regulated.
Well,
that way.
It's gone.
It's gone.
I'll still say.
And that's what
such
Johnny's
items-
trying to say, that, okay, it's not a sign, so you can put it anywhere.
Other
They're
than
not
right.
prohibited in the right of way.
Along
They're gonna
some
be taken out of the right of way, I can tell you that. Call it what he wants. It's in the right of way, it's coming out.
I'm gonna put something in there about that.
No, so,
Not a sign, but it still can't be in the right of way, so.
no, I don't want to take away any, the right of people to advertise.
Yeah, exactly.
But you get a lot of these commercial things that people are sticking in the right of way.
Trying to tack to our telephone.
Or they tack them to a
Our brand new
telephone.
telephone.
Yeah. Now that is where we would draw the line.
Get them right down. They can't do that.
Yeah.
Even
But
for
they, if they want to put it, they put it in someone's yard.
cleaning,
Yeah,
That's different.
shutter replacement.
yeah.
So that's not a sign, right?
What?
What?
That's creepy.
Yeah, that's.
That'd be artwork, I think.
No, that's
Decorative.
decorative. That's not a sign.
That's art.
Is that your?
It's advertising a stable.
It doesn't
It's
tell
not
me
on a
anything
barn.
about it, though. It just is a.
It just tells me they like horses. And
Is that one of the incidentals?
Is there a sign
The
nearby?
incidental.
Yeah, there's a sign, Green Seed Farm. Right next to it, just on the other side of the driveway. This is on one side of the driveway. And
But then that would be the sign. This would be the.
Well, the horse isn't the
artwork.
sign, but there is a sign.
The sign's the sign, but the horse is
That's
artwork.
artwork.
For decoration.
Somebody's gonna complain when I pull a big old cannon down and stick it at the end of my driveway.
Like,
Art.
that represents me.
Art,
Oh, I
I'm in.
don't like
Cannon.
have those
Cannon.
fake deer in their front yards. Oh my God, they get me every
Stresses me
time.
out.
Oh,
Especially,
every
So-
time.
especially coming up at 7:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
When I'm still like half my coffee out. Like I have not had a full cup of coffee and these deer look like they're moving. So stressful.
Oh, Peter.
Giant tomato.
Oh,
not a sign, right? Farm stand.
Shade.
I think it's artwork.
Is that in the township?
I think you're fine.
Is that in our
Uh,
township?
Yeah, it's on Duncan Run Road.
Yeah, little like marketplace.
Where at?
It's the,
they have a farmer's market?
So where is it?
like, what?
It's on Duncan Run.
Never seen it either.
That's fun.
And they've got Saturn.
Oh,
But that's all residential.
Well, it's agriculture, right?
They're not selling anything.
It's just a big tomato hanging out by the road.
Big tomato.
Big piece of art.
On
I think
Dunkin'
it's
Run.
also art.
With a hat on the top. Is a hat on
It's
the top?
amazing what you'll find.
Is it there for decorative purposes?
Anyways, where are we going with this?
I'm not sure.
Got lost.
No,
I got-
we're done. We're done.
We've ended
done
up
with the
going
sign.
back to talking about what the definition.
Sign for pictures, Tom.
Yeah.
What is a sign?
Okay, we're back to that?
Well, that's where Tom is taking us.
Oh.
I would like to go forward with,
Yeah.
The permitted signs under 2204. Vehicular signs, is there any, there's nothing in that paragraph that needs to be changed, I don't think, is there?
I don't know. I haven't really looked into this section in detail because we were focused on the other one. So I think I need more time to provide appropriate.
Well, we have 7 minutes. Can you read it? A paragraph in 7 minutes?
Well, I'd like to discuss the real estate signs that we got hung up on. So I'm wondering if real estate signs could be completely removed and just be considered a temporary sign. And then we could maybe improve the temporary signs section to be more applicable, because now, I know this was, a township in Michigan. However, I liked their temporary signs section, which also seemed to include what would be applicable to like a real estate sign, as we were discussing, like a real estate sign for house sale or something like that. Maybe, that's a temporary sign.
Is this a temporary sign?
Well,
It could, well, it doesn't fall, it might not fall within our temporary sign guidelines. So we have to, like I said, we'd have to modify the wording for temporary signs to be appropriate.
It's just
To
on an
appropriately,
AR1
I'll
property,
limit
isn't
and
it?
not.
Well, let
Just on
me,
AR1.
let me go back to the statement that I made earlier. We were giving Scott a directive about what to do with this paragraph, and now you're taking us in a different direction. So do you want to have me tell Scott, ignore what I said earlier?
I don't know, Scott, what do you think?
Well, the only thing you said was continue to look into treating multifamily different than single family.
Right.
Which I think honestly with multifamily, I don't know that needs to be handled here because I feel like that's going to be rezoned before anybody can market a site as multifamily, they're gonna have to rezone it. And as part of that rezoning, they should be going into, they should be defining what their signage is gonna be once they get it zoned.
Well, what we got stuck on is the, like, for rent signs. So like if you have for rent signs in front of apartment buildings and they could put, 6 of
Right.
them right in a row and they could be there forever because things are perpetually for rent in an apartment building.
And that's
Like,
why we were looking at it from the perspective of separating it into
Yeah.
single family versus multifamily. Are we still wanting to do that?
And that's fine. I was just offering an alternative
So
to
what does
doing that
this,
at all.
this say that you liked?
Well, it's quite lengthy,
Oh.
so I'm not gonna get into that
Okay.
in 4 minutes, but if we wanna go the route of just splitting out the real estate signs into single family and multifamily, that's fine. I don't feel particularly strong.
What's the group want to do with that? I mean, before we were going in that direction.
Mhm.
Are we still wanting to continue that then? Keep the, all right, Scott, I guess the direction is, yes. Try to address it that way. By separating out the multifamily so that it would only the wording would need to, for real estate signs, either we have it separated or we were, in this section, we're only dealing with single family.
Okay, I'll look into it.
Okay, given that we are at 9:27. We're approaching a point where we should be considering a motion to adjourn. We will be meeting on the 5th. The next workshop meeting would still be in basically 2 weeks again, Scott.
Me?
May, yeah.
Did you talk to Scott Zimmer? Is he doing okay?
No, I haven't talked to him.
Okay, but he knows about July preliminary.
I don't know whether he does or not.
Who?
I mean,
Scott Zimmer,
Messer?
Messer,
Messer.
Messer.
Yeah, we gotta work on names.
Yes.
I did want to hit you guys up on the
I think-
Neff property.
Yeah.
Just so you know, I sent him a cease and desist. He's got 5 days to answer me back whether he's gonna comply, and if he doesn't, I'm gonna take it up to Corey, and Corey's gonna take it to court. So we're gonna put a cease and desist, or I put a cease and desist on it.
On which property?
Neff
Oh, on Neff.
and place was in today with Lexus talking to me. And he's not sure if they're gonna continue on with the PCD. He was talking about, I don't know if he talked to you guys about this or not. He said something to me about trying to go with the fact that it was a legal non-conforming use. I think they're gonna explore that. He hasn't told me exactly what he's gonna do with it, but just so you know, in case he calls up, but
This is Neff.
Oh, that one, we did schedule potentially
yeah,
June 30th.
June,
yeah.
30th.
June
You might
30th.
change that before then. Just so you know.
The other one, the Capaccio, is not till July.
Yeah, that's best.
And I have left it.
And you did talk with him?
I
Okay,
already, I emailed him.
all right, good, thank you.
Okay.
So I guess we'll find out what's happening with Neff.
Soon as got
and
signed,
we'll
yeah, I
either,
said that
we'll
meeting.
we may or may not have that meeting that was temporarily scheduled
Yeah.
as a
He said he'd
preliminary
let us
meeting.
know though. But
Okay,
I told him this morning that his Neff got a cease and desist. So
all right. Well, thank you for letting us know about that.
Are you asking me to be here in 2 weeks?
Yeah, 2 weeks.
Okay. It looks.
It would
good.
be the 12th,
I think I
May the
can.
12th. That would be our normal workshop meeting.
Okay.
Okay? And then we'll continue to move forward with the sign regulations at that time. We also now that everyone has a copy of the two relating to the industrial, I know we'll have an opportunity to work on those. Let me ask the group, do you want to set the sign regulations aside temporarily and deal with the industrial ones first? Or do you want to try to finish the signs?
Prefer to finish the signs while we're
Yeah,
on this track.
Okay,
I prefer signs.
all right. So just leave the planned industrial and the industrial district. Just have them set aside temporarily, Scott.
Yep.
And we'll see if we can try to get through these sign regulations. It would be nice if we could get through most of it at the next meeting in May.
There's lots. There's been gnats all
Yeah.
night. I
I know.
smashed one on my page earlier. Anyways, would you?
What'd you do?
There's gnats. Anyways, it's not.
Oh,
not-
gnats.
Not relevant to the meeting at all.
Having some good ear.
Like this one
I know,
here.
no, I'm forever.
Oh, I think I just
video
swallowed
on the
one.
internet going like this, like a crazy person.
Don't worry, the camera's not working.
Anywho. Great, we're good. Okay.
Well, don't breathe through your mouth, because you might swallow one.
Nice strategy though to get an adjournment.
Yeah. Are you ready to adjourn? Yes. Okay, I make a motion.
All right, how about a motion to
I
adjourn?
make-
We'll see Scott on the 12th. And signs will be our focus, Scott.
I'll second it.
So moved.
All right, it's been
Second.
moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. We're adjourned. 9:31.
Actually.
No, 9:32.
1 minute slow, it's actually 9:33.
I've got same thing.